Hello, this is Kathleen McKee of Olean.com, Machine Embroidery Art.
When working with large text, you have a different set of problems to contend with. So we'll go to our text, and when we pull down the drop-down menu, we'll be using the regular text options. Now, I have already chosen a TrueType Arial font to work with this tutorial. And we are going to click on the page and type in all caps ABC, press enter or left mouse, and because this is going to be like a large jacket back or something, let's optimize this hoop. Now, something I forgot to mention in the previous tutorials is that whenever you do choose a TrueType font, you have the option to change it under your TrueType font settings. The same things that you would have if you were using Microsoft Word or any other program that allows you to use TrueType font. You have your TrueType font attribute setting. Let's change it to bold italic and say OK. And notice how now the text is a lot bolder or wider, and it's in italics. Now, because the default fill stitch for fonts or for text is a satin stitch, the first thing we need to figure out is whether these stitches are too long to be a satin, because in large text it's still going to be a satin stitch, so we might have to adjust that. I can tell you by looking at it that it is too long to be a satin stitch, because you see where the machine has dropped down a stitch where it thinks it needs to put one, because it doesn't like to sew a satin stitch any longer than 10 millimeters. So let's just double check it with our measure tool and click on one point and go to the other side, click and look down below. Oh yeah, 17.58 millimeters long. That's way too long for a satin stitch. So let's go ahead and choose this under text and change that to a fill stitch. Now, fill stitches don't always look as pretty and shiny as a satin stitch, so we can do a few things to improve on that as well. The density for text, of course, is 5, and also because it's a large text, we might need to make that a little bit more dense to have the coverage that we need for a large fill area. And we might also want to put an undersewing. Another thing we'll have to change is the pull compensation, so it will register correctly, especially if we have an outline around it. Now, another thing you can do to make the fill stitch have more sheen, the default for the step pitch is 4 millimeters, and I forgot to change that when I was last using the program, so that's why the 5 was still there. But let's get our measure tool and look real close. We want that step pitch, and as I said, the default is at 4, but we want to make it a little bit longer. We'll say 5 or better, and that will help get. Another edit you might want to do is, you see where these stitches are getting real tight and might break your thread when you're sewing it out, or cut a hole in the material. You might want to put that. But one of the biggest problems we have with large text is the stitches separating and showing your fabric underneath wherever a horizontal and a vertical stitch come together. So you might have a gap here, 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 and on the B, here and here, because we've got stitches coming in together at 2 different directions. So how we need to correct this with large text, you don't notice it on small text because they're small text, is we need to make patches for these areas here, and we will do that with our manual punch tool. And I'm going to use just the straight block manual punch. The first thing I'm going to do is I want to select a different color than what we're working with. Any old color, doesn't make a difference. We'll make this green, or actually I've already used green. We'll make this blue. So we need to make a patch, and as I showed you on our manual punch lesson, it's top, bottom, top, bottom. Then I'm going to go to a running stitch. I'm going to go here, Go back to my straight block, bottom, top, bottom, go to my running stitch, go to here, go to back to block, bottom, top, double click. Now let's correct these areas on the B as well. Top, bottom, send out a running stitch to about here, go back to straight block, double click. Now that we have our patches made, we want to move them in front of our text, which will cover those up. And we need to change the color to the same color as the text. So by selecting in the sewing order and then right clicking, we select the objects, and we're going to change that color to red. The problem with PE Design 10, and I sure hope they correct this problem, when you're using a manual punch, you see how it just did the manual punch, but it did not convert the running stitches to the same color. I hope they fix this flaw because it's a real pain. So we have to select all of those parts, and by keeping our finger on the control key, we can select all three of them, then right click, select objects, and change that color to red. Now when it sews out, you're going to see the patches are going to sew. Whoops. Here we go. Now is the patches are going to sew out first, and then they'll be covered up by the satin stitches, and you're not going to have that gap where the horizontal and vertical parts meet. I hope this explains a little bit more how to get around some of the problems of working with large text.